What's good, folks? Welcome to a training camp edition of the Cover One Film Room, the show that gives you the hows and whys behind both the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills. I'm one of your two hosts, as always, Anthony Prohaska, joined live in the flesh by Mr. Erik Turner. We're at training camp. It's cool and comfortable in the shade. We melted on the bleachers, but we're out from there, here to talk about some standout pieces from today, a lot of schematic and structural, as we are wont to do here. But Erik, it's your day one here at this training camp. How you feel? What do you think of the day? And just overall high-level thoughts about it.
Like you said, it was hot. It was definitely hot. We went through several Gatorades and waters, so it was nice to be out here. Football's back, right? Football's back. It was, as you said, my first day here, so I wasn't really too zoned in on specific players. For me, it was like, okay, we have two new coordinators on each side, one on each side of the ball. So I kind of wanted to focus on that. So a lot of that stuff we're going to be talking about for me is top-down, big picture stuff. Joe Brady, OC for the Bills, and obviously Bobby Babich on the defensive side.
It's funny how so this is your day one, this is my day three. My day one and day two, I was very top-down structure scheme, and today I was a little more into the weeds of some player specifics. But we want to start with the scheme, the structure, the overarching pieces. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. His offense is sexy. Josh Allen, Bills offense. But so much of the conversation this year and in this camp centers around Joe Brady.
Yeah.
You and I talked about it in the film room last week, Wednesday. We talked about it a bunch today. There's several pieces we want to highlight from a schematic and structural perspective. Let's start with the motion game that Joe Brady's been using on offense.
You nailed it. You nailed it last week. A lot of motion prior to snap. Not every play, but there was a lot of motion. And today it seemed that a lot of the motion came from more of the running back position rather than the wide receivers running across the formation and back across the formation, kind of getting them tired. Instead, we saw a lot of just simple motion by the running back, short area motion, just next to Josh Allen in the formation, and then just motioning a little outside the tackle box. They get a look at the defense, ID the coverage man or zone, and there was a lot of that today. And I really think that's Joe Brady kind of incorporating more of the running backs all together from the top down. There's a lot of stress prior to the snap with motion, but a lot with the running back position, and it kind of gives you an idea how involved the running backs are going to be in this offense, in the passing game specifically.
Yeah, I felt like today every motion piece was like the running back or Curtis Samuel in particular.
Right.
Like even when Samuel was out at wide receiver. And I like that running back motion piece because it ties into the larger motion, button pushing, lever pulling aspects that we've talked about Joe Brady needs to do this year. But it also ties into a forte of his that we broke down last year when he took over the offense, going back to his time at LSU, going back to his time with Carolina, his ability to find ways to get the running backs involved in the pass game. We saw it as soon as he took over the team last year, and then in big moments, in big games like against the Chiefs in the regular season with James Cook, what he was able to do with Cook and Ty Johnson, even Tavis Murray to a degree, getting them involved in the pass game by design. He seems to be continuing to do that, which we expected, and then also kind of baking in some ways for the running backs to kind of be natural checkdowns or have natural mismatches by how he's aligning them pre-snap or what he's doing with them to also identify the defense, but put them in spots to succeed individually.
Right, and you talked about Curtis Samuel, and he's definitely a hybrid player in this offense. You saw him in the backfield a bunch. Again, motion, handing the ball off, running rail routes, up the sideline. They're doing some cool things with, the formations too with the running backs, where rather than just the normal stance next to the quarterback, they'll start there, but then they become wider prior to the snap to get them out into a route. And that's something that we're going to keep talking about over the next few weeks, is how often the Bills are going to try to get 5 eligibles out into a route every single play. We saw it a bunch today. And I think it kind of goes back to, I know it's kind of a trendy discussion when it's positionless football, but you have a hybrid player in Curtis Samuel, but you also have two very talented backs in the passing game in James Cook and Ray Davis. Now, James Cook was excused from practice today, so Ray Davis saw a bunch of the reps, and aside from the fumble on a carry he stood out. I thought he was a guy, if we're talking offense, he stood out. He just makes it look really easy in that passing game, man.
Yeah, and even Ty Johnson has looked good as a pass catcher, but Ray Davis, to your point, he stood out since day one. Just him in individual, him in team. He's cooking dudes in one-on-one. We saw him in one-on-ones towards the end of practice, which are designed for those dudes to succeed. Cooking guys left and right on option routes and angle routes, but he's winning in the seam. He's winning on rail routes. You can see he's so comfortable coming out of the backfield, and Brady getting these guys into those spots, and then tying it into another structural piece of getting 4 and 5, more importantly, out into the route distribution consistently And granted, it's early in practice and early in camp, and defenses aren't necessarily trying to dictate protection and send stuff your way.
Pads
no pads, and
yeah.
you're not trying to maybe necessarily adjust and keep a guy in. But so much of football now, with how much zone coverage is played, and even though there's man in specific elements, it's still a zone coverage league. Granted, there's the match coverages that end up playing out like man, but if you can get more bodies out into the route distribution, if you can flood those zones, if you can drain those coverages, it just gives you more options, and it's harder for a defense to account for those guys. And it also goes into that nature of having positionless dudes. You can create these mismatches all over the field, and sometimes they're easily identifiable when you're in spread, and you just talked about that. You just shift the running back out a little bit, and somebody goes out and goes with them, and you're Allen, you can diagnose and see what you got, and then you go from there.
Right, and the running back position altogether, when we're talking the passing game, is probably the least defensed position. It's the most difficult because it's usually like the fourth or fifth option in an offensive scheme. So defensive coordinators have nightmares, trying to cover and scheme up things to slow down running backs. And like I said, the Bills have two very capable running backs. Obviously, you could even, again, add Johnson in there. Yeah. But then you add in Curtis Samuel, and there was one formation. They're in an empty set. There were no running backs on the field. No running backs on the field, 2 tight ends, and 3 receivers. But one of those receivers was Curtis Samuel. Is he a running back?
Yeah.
Is he a receiver? If they are out in an empty formation, they shift in prior to the snap, he can run the ball.
Yeah.
He's very good, a very good runner. He's a guy that is just going to be a threat in the run and the pass game. But overall, I thought the offense looked crisp. I thought they took it to the defense for a majority of the day. But I will say, Josh Allen, his mechanics work and honing his craft this offseason. Dude, some of the throws he had today, he had the one he threaded over the middle versus a too high structure. Over the middle to Dawson Knox.
In the end zone.
And he was covered.
Yeah, he was.
That was my theme for the day was it didn't matter if the bigger receivers were covered. Josh was threading it today. He was throwing it to windows, into tight coverage, and trusting those guys. That's what really stood out for me. His mechanics, his efficiency, and his accuracy. And I'm talking placement, not just accuracy. Placement was on today from Josh.
Yeah, that throw was that split coverage look over the linebacker between the 2 safeties, and you're in the red zone, so there's less space for the offense to work because you have the natural defender behind you in the goal line. And he had that throw in team. I'm also thinking the one towards the end in one-on-ones to Keon Coleman with the late hands from Keon, but it's a dot from Josh Allen. And it's something you and I talked about offline before we did the film last week. Him warming up to start day 1 and day 2 last week. He is doing specific warm-up in his game to work on his base, to keep that throwing motion tight like we've talked about. He felt like he got too long last year. His feet were wonky. His base wasn't good. He was kind of getting off platform and not in like a, oh, what an off-platform throw kind of way. Off-platform that was leading to inaccuracy, especially downfield. He's been much tighter with everything. It's really benefited the offense. Definitely a huge takeaway today. I echo that. And for me, my biggest takeaway is going to continue to be the thing I've worked on the most this offseason, just the whole condensed formation piece and continuing to rotate in these wide receivers and the tight ends and being able to live in a world where you can be an 11 and you can go tight and you can hammer dudes, or you can go spread, and then you can do the same thing with your 12 personnel grouping because of the size, the frame, the athleticism they have in those 2 rooms, and then sprinkling in the running back piece with it of Curtis Samuel as a running back, of what James Cook can do, of what Ray Davis can do. It really creates this complementary football aspect on the offensive side of the ball only, where an opponent has to account for almost everything, and that's so much in terms of preparation going into a game, but then also pre-snap, and then you're adding motions and you're adding shifts and all these things. It's just a lot from a mental. They're almost like mentally overloading a defense.
And we saw a bunch of that today. There was some really nice play action passes with some crossers from Kincaid, Matt Collins. A lot of those adjustments, those leverage reads from those receivers and tight ends. So some really good stuff. Again, under center play action. They were working in the middle of the field early in practice, and they did a really good job. So let's flip the script. Let's go to the defensive side.
Yeah.
What stood out to you on the defensive side?
Something you and I talked about for the majority of the day. I feel like the safety spinning. Every time it happened, I feel like we looked at each other and we're like, safety spin, safety spin, safety spin. The Bills, a team that for forever, my individual show is called Disguise Coverage because of the Bills' ability to disguise coverage, but so much of that was tied to the Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer era, which Poyer is gone and in Miami. Micah Hyde is a free agent. I guess you can still kind of play the game of being like, will he or won't he potentially return? But the Bills look different in their safety room this year from a skill set perspective. And it was interesting to see what they did today with how much they were spinning, which it felt like they were spinning a ton. And sometimes it was just like for like, the down safety, right as the snap happens, is spinning to the post, and the post safety is spinning down. Or the looks we talked about them last year, but also earlier today, where Taron Johnson is dropping as a deep half player, and one of the safeties is dropping as the Tampa 2 player in the hole there, and they're doing a Tampa 2 robber type deal. Just everything they were doing with their safeties to disguise coverage, to spin at the last minute possible and confuse quarterbacks in trying to, again, change the pre to post snap picture and make life difficult for an offense.
Yeah, I thought that was cool and very interesting because, you're going to have a safety spinning as a ball is snapped. The quarterback can be fooled. He can be fooled to think, hey, that seam's open, but then you're having that backside safety spin to the post, and his shoulders, his eyes, his whole body is, right at the seam.
Yeah.
So if they have a tight end going up the seam, which the Bills did, he's going to run right into that seam route, and usually that's that cover 3 look, and those are the weaknesses. So it's almost fooling, the opposing quarterback. So that'll be interesting. One of two things is going to happen. Yeah. They're going to get a turnover. It's going to be, or honestly, they're going to thread it like Josh did against, the Jets last year, and now you have a big play. So it's interesting. And I thought overall the defense had its moments. There are a couple really nice plays, but I think overall they're still trying to figure out their identity under Babbage. We talked about, I think Babbage is calling the plays.
Yes.
I think he's calling the plays, and I think they're still working through their identity, especially in the back half of the defense.
Yeah, it's been a theme that a lot of people have talked about since camp started, kind of the offense winning almost every day and being ahead of the defense, and then kind of that being ironic or different versus years past, like we've talked about. Usually the defense is ahead of the offense at this point in the season or this point in the offseason. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like they're necessarily on the same page from a back-end perspective. We're seeing a lot of completions happening, and then Milano and Rasul Douglas talking, and Taron Johnson and Taylor Rapp talking, and then I noted on day one after they did team, Rapp and Taron and Babbage all having a lot of conversation on the sideline, and it seems like they're really trying to work through some things, which also maybe, are they adding some new wrinkles? Like, what are they trying to do differently under Babbage? And some of that comes to the territory, but we're seeing a good offense come to camp every day, but we're also seeing a defense that is a bit, I don't want to say behind the 8 ball, but a bit behind schedule, and we're seeing them get gashed a bit from time to time.
Yeah, and again, I think that's kind of expected with the kind of the coordinator change and
all the coaching changes
and
at 3 levels.
The ID at the second level, at third level. You said no Poyer, no Hyde, like that's huge. They used to run it back there. Yeah. They didn't need anyone coaching them up at all. Yeah. It was all run by them. And so now you do see Taron Johnson, communicating a lot more. And I'm not just saying like verbally, you see the hand signals more from him. And so there's some rallying that needs to be done on the back end. Of course, they're still rotating through who's going to start next to Taylor Rapp. Today it was Hamlin for a majority of the day, right? So that's still an open competition, which is good to see. Honestly, I don't know where it's going to go right now. I mean, Edwards kind of pulled up a little bit, like he may have tweaked something or still kind of hurt or working through an injury, but they're still going to continue to roll through that safety position.
Yeah, he's been hurt for this offseason, and then towards the end, like you said, pulled up, sat down on a cooler, looked frustrated, was looking at something on his lower body. Trainers came over. But even through the majority of the day, he was working with the second team. It was Hamlin and Rapp. Cole Bishop got some work with the first team, but then initially the second team safety tandem was Bishop and Cam Lewis, and then it was Bishop and Edwards, and then Edwards was also running with the 3. So interesting to see how that whole safety position tracks and trends. Cole Bishop had a couple really nice plays today, individual and team, and then Kyer Elam. Yeah. He's a big talking point for a lot of Bills fans. He had a nice interception today. He had another play that ended up being a touchdown for the Bills, but he read it, drove on it, he just fell down.
It would have been an interception.
Yes, the process was very sound. It was not the result that you wanted. But he, as we were talking about earlier, he continues to have just his whole production and play style of like having these moments where it's just brilliant. It looks like he's putting it together, but then he couples those with moments of inconsistency or kind of gaps in his play. But today was a good day for him overall.
It was a good day, and it's tough because even Benford played really well today too. They tried running a double reverse, shot play down the field to Matt Collins. Benford was step for step right in the pocket of Matt Collins, shut him down. So you kind of saw both of the identity of both those players. Benford's never fooled, always disciplined. Elam, he just makes plays on the ball. He does. He's just always around the ball. But you got to stabilize that and be in the right position, especially in those zone coverage looks, which, from time to time, he has those lapses in coverage.
Yeah, but it's nice to see something for him that we've talked about in this offseason, just kind of resetting potentially with the new coaching staff,
Slade,
and being able to put more confidence into his game. We don't say this just because we did an episode with him. He's so tremendously smart. The football IQ, him talking about quarterback shoulder angles and how he knows that it's going to go to this player instead of that player, and how that changes what he does in the route distribution. And then pairing that with, again, the lineage and coming from a football family with his uncle and his dad playing in the NFL. Like, he's so smart and he has all the tools. It just has not clicked. And days like this, I think, where he has good productive moments, and even the one that we talked about where he fell down. How many players from that
they all
starting
came
defense,
over? Like,
yes,
that, you had that.
They all
you read it
recognized
perfectly.
Yep.
He was there. He was getting dapped from everyone.
Yeah.
He just slipped.
Yeah.
He just slipped along the boundary. That would have been an interception. He knew it. He's jumping up and down.
Yeah.
You know, frustrated. But no, I thought he had a good day. But overall, like I said, I think the offense, you know, kind of won in the long run at practice today. But tomorrow, I know you're not gonna be able to make it.
Yeah.
I'll be back out here, and I'm looking forward to. I want some hitting.
I'll say,
where are the pads?
Probably get some pads.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow's the day. If not, we'll be out here Tuesday, so maybe it'll be that day. Either way, I'm hoping to get at least, you know, one day of pads, and you get to see, you know, who the chumps are. You know, you get to see who the chumps are now that the pads are on, and you know, got to go head to head. It's cool. They ended practice with the one-on-ones
They did.
too.
That was
very competitive. Hopefully we get some of that tomorrow with
Yes.
the pads on.
Yeah, last year at this time, we got pads and we got one-on-ones, wide receivers and DBs. No pads this year, but they ended with one-on-ones, which was really awesome to see. And, you know, like you alluded to, once the pads come on, things just change a little bit. You see who kind of rises to that level of physicality, who kind of shrinks a little bit. But more importantly, you see things really start to play out, especially from a blocking perspective, from a trench perspective. It's really hard to see, oh, you know, who's winning up front, who looks good on the O-line. It's like, there's no pads. Like, you really got to see once the pads come on. But then also from the coverage standpoint, the pads come on, who stays with that level of physicality, who's able to move, how do they move, what do we see? Yeah, tomorrow's going to be a good day. Tuesday will be a good day. We'll have you folks covered. Eric, anything else on today, on the camp, on the team that you want to speak about before we say goodbye to these fine folks?
I'm just excited to be back here. Obviously at my alma mater at Fisher, got to see some good friends that you know, I played ball with here, and got to hang out with you guys. You know, got to watch from the stands and talk football again. I'm just happy to be seeing new teams, new film eventually. You know, so the season's back, and I'm totally excited.
Yeah, today was a great day. I wish you luck tomorrow because it's supposed to be hotter than it was today. And today was a brutal one, but we had a great day. More to come from us. Obviously, we'll be back live Wednesday with the Cover One Film Room to go over different pieces and things. Rate, review, subscribe on YouTube. Drop a like on this video. Wherever you are listening, rate, review, subscribe. All the shows, you know the drill. We appreciate you fine folks. We hope you and your family, friends, and loved ones are all doing well, staying safe, be kind to one another, take care of one another. We will see you Wednesday for another episode of the Film Room. And until then, Godspeed, and as always, go Bills.